everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for joining us today on this live stream about enhanced conversions. My name is Genevieve Huskins. I'm EMEA product lead looking after enhanced conversions among some other products, and I'm based in London. And I'm joined today by Emma Phillips, who is our global product lead for enhanced conversions for web, based out of Boulder, Colorado, and then Jane, who is our global product lead for enhanced conversions for leads, based over in New York. So today, we're going to be talking about enhanced conversions for web and enhanced conversions for leads. And before we jump right in, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes from me. So firstly, please do continue to submit your questions. So in the chat, there's a form where you can submit any questions that are top of mind for you. We're going to try and get through all of them by the end of the session. Do take some notes, because while we will be uploading this recording on the website later on, we will be cutting off the Q&A part. So please do keep track of any critical information that we share. And then finally, please do leave us feedback. We always want to hear what we can do to make these sessions more useful. So please do let us know if you've enjoyed the show and what else you'd like to see next time. So in terms of our agenda for today, Emma's going to kick us off with a bit more information on why enhanced conversions matters. So we think it's very critical that advertisers make use of it this year and beyond, and she'll tell you why. She will then follow up with some details on enhanced conversions for web. Jane will then talk about enhanced conversions for leads. She'll close us off as well, and then we'll go into live Q&A. Let me walk you through this first section, and then we'll try Emma again. So as you may have heard before, we are still seeing a big transforming shift in how measurement works and how consumers interact with tech in 2025. So of course, on the one hand, we continue to see stronger and stronger desires for good user privacy, both in how users behave on the web, but then also in how device manufacturers and browsers operate. And so there's an increasing restriction on how some of the old technologies, such as cookies and third-party cookies, can work. But then on the other hand, AI is actually creating these amazing new opportunities. And so marketing campaigns, or the way bidding works, is actually smarter than ever. And so these two things happen at the same time, making measurement and good data actually more important than ever. Now, on the next slide, how can enhanced conversions actually help you with that? So if we skip one more slide over, the beauty of enhanced conversions is that it helps you measure properly across the entire funnel that your customers may have with you, regardless of your objective. So historically, enhanced conversions actually primarily was useful for advertisers who only measured conversions online. So you could think about a basket, a purchase, a simple checkout on your website. But actually, since a couple of years, we now also enable fully offline measurement, where if someone submits a form on your website, you can still afterwards import offline data of whether that person truly ended up converting with your business. And so this distinction between online goals and offline goals is important, because it'll help you choose between the right type of enhanced conversions. So how actually does it help you when it pertains to web-based conversions? So let me walk first through how enhanced conversions work, and then I'll tell you how this actually helps your business. So enhanced conversions helps you measure web-based conversions in cases where cookies are unavailable. So cookies were first created, I believe, in 1995. It's quite an old technology that used to help us measure how someone went from an ad click to a conversion on your website. So if someone would buy something, we would be able to use a cookie to look up which ad click someone came from. And this would help you tell whether your campaigns achieved their objective, so whether someone purchased something, but it would also help us optimize, because to bidding, understanding whether someone did something important after clicking on an ad is, of course, a really critical information. Now, how does enhanced conversions for web work? Rather than using a cookie to measure the path between the ad click and the conversion, with enhanced conversions, you capture user-provided data on your website, and there's a few different ways to go about that. You share that user data with us. This data is hashed, and I'll actually tell you a bit more about that in a minute. And we then look up whether this hash user data, whether we saw this originate from an ad click. So again, it's a similar function to a cookie, but the technical way that we go about this is a bit different. And this actually means that we can use this technology in cases where cookies don't work. And there's multiple browser limitations or user limitations to why cookies wouldn't work. So a good example of this, for instance, would be if users move between devices. That's something where, of course, cookies don't kick in because they don't share between browsers or devices. So that's a good example. Engaged view conversions rely on third-party cookies, and while those still work on Chrome, those are largely not supported on non-Chrome browsers. And then there's also some browser restrictions in some cases that limit how long an ad cookie can stay alive. So on Safari, for instance, if someone converts outside of a 24-hour window, meaning yesterday at 11 a.m. they searched, clicked on an ad, and then today at 12 they actually end up buying something, we already lose the cookie in that case. And so you, of course, see a conversion happen on your website, but we actually are not able to tell that that conversion was driven by Google Ads, and if so, which specific campaign that came from. So again, that limits your ability to count correctly, but it also limits your ability to optimize based on that data. So why exactly is this helpful? And I see actually some advertisers think about this wrong. Some advertisers think that enhanced conversions is primarily helpful, again, because it helps us count correctly. And that's true. When you use enhanced conversions, you tend to observe slightly more conversions than you would without enhanced conversions, again, because there are many cases already today where cookies don't work. And that's important that you count correctly, because, of course, you want to make smart decisions on which campaigns to put your budget in and how much budget to allocate to Google overall. But even more important, perhaps, is the ability for bidding and automated campaign types to optimize towards good quality data. And so, yes, the counting is great, but actually the optimization piece is much more important still. And so we know that if you use enhanced conversions, we have visibility into some user paths that otherwise we wouldn't be able to optimize for. Search-based advertising is somewhat straightforward to measure, because where there's a click, it's easier for us to find the origin of the ad click, of course. But if you think about campaign types like Performance Max, demand gen, or if you advertise on YouTube, there again, your performance, your optimization would be much stronger with good quality data. Finally, then, we see many advertisers shift towards using other tools to effectively measure and judge performance. So you could think about things like incrementality studies, conversion lists, or even things like MMM. So we just announced a brand new MMM called Meridian, if you've heard of that. But even these tools rely on having good quality data to make your decisions based off of. And so if you want to test the true incrementality of your campaigns, it would be very important that you count every conversion and not that you only make your decisions based on partial data. And so for that reason, if you want to do any incrementality testing, we really strongly recommend, again, that you would use enhanced conversions for web. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the correct implementation methods that we have available. So there's three broad ways to go about this at the moment. So one is we have an implementation option that's called automatic implementation, which means that you sign our terms of service, and I'll talk about that next. And we then try to change your Google tag, or within Google Tag Manager, we try to pick up the right information that looks like an email address. We hash it, and then it gets shared to our servers. So automatic implementation is good for you if you are either not so technical or you are quite short on time. You can check the box, and again, we'll then do our best to try and find the correct field to identify as email address. So if you don't have time, this is a great option for you. The second option is what we refer to as manual configuration. So you would go into the settings, either for your Google Tag or Google Tag Manager, and you would tell the system, this is where I keep my email address. And there's a few different ways of how you can tell the system where to pick up the right information. And those are either a little bit more easier or a bit more technical, requiring some code. But still, if you follow the instructions on our Help Center, this is fairly straightforward. There's clear step-by-step guides to go about that. And so that's the second option. So data still gets passed via the tag, but you tell the system where to pick up the exact correct information. Finally, then, if you feel happier sharing information via API, that is possible. You then send data to the Google Ads API. And really what you're doing with that is you're making a conversion adjustment. So you're telling Google, remember this conversion that you saw via the tag. I want to append this consented user-provided data so that I can measure my enhanced conversions. This is the most difficult version to set up. It does tend to require a bit more developer resource, but because it's fully server-to-server, some advertisers would feel more comfortable sharing data that way. Now, when we talk about data sharing, of course, it's very important to us that we handle this very safely. And you, especially if you're based in the EU, also have a regulatory duty to know how exactly data is shared. So I want to walk you through how we process data and then the options that you have available. So firstly, the data originates from your website environment. And then, as I just highlighted, there's two key ways that you can choose to pass data to us. So either data is passed via your Google tag, which can be the Google tag directly or configured via Google Tag Manager, or you send the data to us via API. Regardless of which of these two you choose, data is always hashed before it reaches our servers. And this hashing algorithm that we use is called SHA-256, and that's a one-way irreversible hashing mechanism. So that means that if someone were to intercept the traffic between your website and Google, although they might then find the hash data, this is not something that can be reverse engineered. Now, as it pertains to the tag, and this is where things get a little bit complicated, you have two options. If you don't hash data yourself, we will hash it for you before it ever reaches our servers. If you prefer, you can hash your own data. And so on the help center, you'll find a bit more detail about this. But regardless, and this is really critical, no unhashed data ever reaches Google servers. Now, the data that you can choose to share is one of three parameters. So you can share email addresses, you can share phone numbers, and you can share physical address. We strongly recommend that you always use email address as a base, because that's where we tend to see the highest match rates. We do also allow you to send phone numbers, and if you want, you can also only use phone numbers. And this is actually something that we introduced somewhat recently. I think we've only had that for about a year, a little over a year. So if your business relies solely on just using phone numbers, again, you can just send those, and the match rate won't be as high as using email, but we can still find a decent number of extra conversions for you. Now, what's very important to keep in mind is that we only, firstly, match against Google signed in users. And so a user needs to have a Google account, which doesn't have to be Gmail, but they need to be logged in with us, either via YouTube or some other Google service. And then secondly, we only match your hash data against our own hash data. And so that's the part that happens in the middle. What we then try to do is we see if the data that you sent us, if we find that this user was signed in, and if so, if we can attribute your conversion to an ad click. So that's the first process that happens. If we see that we do not find a match, so either a user wasn't signed in or there was no ad click, we immediately start deleting the user data that you send us. Even if we find a match, the user data itself is deleted, and that process completes within about 20 days. And all that's left would be the matched ad clicks and the conversions. And these then go into three buckets, and that's where the beauty of enhanced conversions or the value kicks in. They go into our conversion measurement and modeling, so how we count for you. They go into bidding, so the way we optimize the bids for your campaigns. And if you use them, they go into incrementality studies. So those are the exact three ways that we use enhanced conversions data. And all of those together reflect the total reported conversions in Google Ads. Finally, then, and this is, again, mostly relevant to the EU audience, but I want to talk a little bit about our designation under the EU and UK GDPR. So enhanced conversions is a processor service. So Google is only the processor of your data, and you are the controller. Now, what that means, and I get a lot of questions about this from European advertisers, is that means that we can only process the data that you share with us for you and on behalf of your specific instructions. I sometimes hear some advertisers fear that we use enhanced conversions data from multiple advertisers to maybe build up profiles of what a certain user buys across multiple websites so that we could target better. But that is not what we do. We are legally obliged to only use this data in the way that you tell us to, which I think gives a lot of advertisers more confidence that this is right for their business. So again, we only use enhanced conversions to provide measurement for your business. It's up to you to decide whether and then how you want to use enhanced conversions. It's also up to you to ensure that you comply with our policies. And so as you go through your legal reviews, definitely check out the enhanced conversions user data policy, which is linked on here, but you can also find it on Google if you search for Google user data policy. That will tell you exactly what we expect from you. And then finally, the Google Ads data processing terms apply as well. So I know that was a bit less technical, a bit more legal, but hopefully that gave you a good sense of how we treat your data. It's actually very similar for enhanced conversions for leads, except there's a second import, which is the truly offline data, which we treat in a very similar way as what I just outlined. So with that, let me pass it over to Jane, who will walk you through enhanced conversions for leads.
Thank you, Jen. And hi, everyone. I'm Jane. I'm the Global Product Lead on Enhanced Conversions for Leads. And we're going to talk a little bit about how Enhanced Conversions for Leads can help you measure your offline conversions. So ECL is designed to help you bring in your offline, deeper funnel data, such as a qualified or a converted lead. Ultimately, we know that advertisers who optimize for deeper funnel conversions see higher quality leads, which is why we're so excited to talk to you a bit more in depth about enhanced conversions for leads and how it can really improve the accuracy of your conversion measurement. I also want to note that enhanced conversions for leads is an upgraded version of offline conversion import. What it does, it supplements the imported offline conversion data with user-provided data, such as an email address, to improve accuracy and bidding. And so I'm sure many of you on today's call have heard of offline conversion import, or you're using it today. And historically, this has been the hero product to track those deeper funnel conversion actions. Yet standard offline conversion import is limited by solely relying on one identifier, and this is the Google Click ID or the gclid. And in certain instances, such as on Safari private browsing mode, that gclid is blocked, which leads to gaps in your measurement. So as you can see in this image, when the gclid is blocked, we can no longer tie the conversion back to the ad, which is why it's so important to use enhanced conversions for leads to bolster your offline measurement with durable identifiers such as PII or user-provided data to ultimately fill those gaps. Okay, so how does this work exactly? And I think just taking a step back, it's very, very similar to how enhanced conversions for web works. But as I mentioned, it's also very similar to standard offline conversion import that relies on that user-provided data, such as an email or a tag. So just walking you through the steps of how this works, a user clicks on an ad after they arrive on your site. They read about your product or service. That user ends up filling in a form on your site, and they become a lead for your business. Your website tag sends Google the Google Click ID and the hashed lead information, such as a hashed email address, but ultimately it's up to you and what you specify. But as Jen mentioned, we strongly recommend sending an email address. Then that gets stored in your CRM. And when that lead ultimately converts, so let's say they become a customer, you upload the gclid and hash lead information, like that hashed email, and Google matches the tag data and the hashed information back to the ad that drove them to become a lead in the first place. So like I said, very, very similar to enhanced conversions for web when it comes to the matching, and also very similar to standard offline conversion import, where you're going through the motion of importing your offline data and sending it back to Google to be able to really optimize for those deeper funnel conversion actions like a qualified or a converted lead. And so how does this actually come to life? And I like to think about this in building blocks. These are the different components that make up the enhanced conversions for lead product. So if we start at the top, the tag ultimately does the work for you, which is why it's so important. It will actually capture the Google Click ID and the user provided data on behalf of you. So it's doing the work. And it measures the touch points to capture that full customer journey. And then ECL relies on identifiers such as the Google Click ID. So if you're already sending it today, if you're using standard offline conversion import, we strongly recommend that you continue to do so. Or if you're setting up enhanced conversions for leads for the first time, like I mentioned, if you use a tag, this will be done on behalf of you, and it ultimately saves you a lot of time. And then lastly, user-provided data. This is really the key to what makes enhanced conversions for leads that durable alternative to standard offline conversion import. We see that advertisers who are also sending user-provided data in addition to that Google Click ID and using a tag are seeing on average a 10% uplift. And this is ultimately what unlocks cross Google conversions, including engaged view conversions, and really helps ensure that you are filling in those measurement gaps where Google Click IDs may be currently blocked today. So all of these things, when you put them together, equals enhanced conversions for leads. And the proof really is in results. So we ran a study last year and we found that advertisers who implemented that UPD or user provided data alongside a Google Click ID saw on average 10% more conversions than measured with standard OCI, 8% on search and 22% on YouTube. And again, the way I like to think of this uplift is happening because there are places today on different browsers, such as Safari private browsing mode, where that Google Click ID is being blocked. And so adding in durable alternatives like user-provided data really does help fill those gaps, hence seeing the uplift. Okay, now I'm going to walk you through a demo of enhanced conversions for leads. Keep in mind, this demo is about 2-ish minutes long. I'm going to give you a high-level overview, but this will be shared afterward as well, so you can follow along at home. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is make sure that you sign the terms of service and you turn on enhanced conversions for leads. It's very important to do this first. Then you can go ahead and create your new conversion actions and ensure that you're setting this up similar to how you would an offline conversion import and really importing via clicks. Now we're going to import our offline data. For the sake of this, we're going to use a Google Sheet. We're going to do this via Google Ads Data Manager. If you haven't heard of Data Manager yet, it's an in-UI tool that allows you to upload your offline data. It makes everything much more seamless and it handles the hashing on behalf of you, which is huge and a huge time saver. So I've gone ahead, I've uploaded sheets via Data Manager. Now I'm finding the correct sheet that pertains to the data that I want to upload. And now you can see I'm matching the fields back to the different fields that exist in my Google Sheet. So you can see there's user provided data here. There's a Google Click ID. Here's how the hashing works on the right-hand side. It's all done on behalf of you. And again, this just makes things super seamless and easy. And then you can go ahead and save that. Now that your data is set up, you can come in and find your new conversion action. Because we already set up enhanced conversions, you're all good to go. And again, just saving everything. And then I'm going to hover over diagnostics and you can see I have an urgent alert here. That's because this was for the sake of today's demo. So you can see the different alerts that are associated with enhanced conversions for leads. You can address these directly in the UI. It will also direct you to a Help Center article. But if you need more assistance, feel free to talk to your Google rep as well, who can help you set up a call with one of our members of our technical team. Again, I know that was a quick overview, and enhanced conversions for leads has many steps. So hopefully that was helpful, but you'll be able to watch the demo afterwards. Okay, so now to talk a little bit about, you've set up enhanced conversions for leads. You're sending that Google Click ID and that user provided data, and you ultimately want to use that data for bidding. Enhanced conversions for leads enables smart bidding. And so a few things to keep in mind. The first is you want to categorize your conversion goals correctly. So This was shown in the demo, either choosing a qualified or a converted lead, which ultimately equals those offline conversions that you're passing back to Google. The next is make one change at a time. Take it slow. This is really, really important to let the system learn. And so that's the best way to manage any potential performance fluctuations. And we have much more detailed information on this in the Help Center, but a really good rule of thumb is just to make one change at a time. We don't want to overwhelm the system, and this will help ensure that you're seeing the least amount of fluctuations. Um, and then lastly, allow your new smart bidding campaign to adjust over 2 to 3 conversion cycles. Again, as you all probably know, there is a learning period with this. And if you take it slow, it can take a little time, but the reward is definitely worth it. And again, these are just best practices to keep in mind when you're starting to bid to your enhanced conversions for leads action. Okay, now to recap and talk about next steps. Again, we've gone through a lot of this, but if you're setting up enhanced conversions for web and you're measuring your online events, you'll want to use enhanced conversions for web. And so make sure that you start by signing your terms of service. This is at the account level. So if you do it for enhanced conversions for web, you're also set for enhanced conversions for leads. Make sure you configure your Google Tag or Google Tag Manager and use those in-UI diagnostics, which I hovered over, to ensure everything is set up correctly. And finally, make sure that your customer data is available on that lead form submit page. This is incredibly important. We have to be able to capture that user first-party data. Again, a lot of this is very similar for enhanced conversions for leads, just a bit of a different use case. So enhanced conversions for leads really works if you're looking to import those deeper funnel offline conversion actions, such as a qualified or a converted lead. Again, make sure you sign the terms of service. Make sure that you're able to import that offline data. So it's either stored in a CRM, an API, or some sort of a Google Sheet or Excel. And then lastly, ensure that your diagnostics are working. And ensure that you're sending all events. So this is really important, but not just ensuring that you're sharing rows with PII, but also Google Click IDs as well. So sending all combinations, all rows, and all events. And now we're going to begin the live Q&A.
All right, thank you so much. I think we're all back, and I think Emma's mic has recovered from whatever happened earlier. Emma, you are on mute, so maybe soon you'll unmute. But so we're going to jump into the live Q&A, and thank you already for those who have submitted new questions. I see some great questions pop up. So let's start from the top. The first question that we received was, is it necessary to collect the conversion value in order to trigger enhanced conversion? So Jane is going to take this one.
Yes, this is a great question. And I think everyone on this call knows that not all leads are the same. And so being able to differentiate by value is extremely important. So if that's information that you're storing on your end, you can certainly share that back with Google and use a smart bidding strategy that allows you to really optimize for those leads that are ultimately worth more and have higher value for your business. Again, There's a lot of information on this in our help center. So if you're looking to learn more, I highly recommend taking a look at our value-based bidding section of the help center. This will walk you through step-by-steps and best practices of how to set the values, what our best practices are to see the best performance.
Amazing, thank you. So next up then we received how can I confirm that enhanced conversions is working in Google Ads, what fields are being sent. Before you were able to see it in conversion diagnostics, but it seems to be removed. Emma.
How does my mic sound? Wow. So nice to be welcomed back to the group. This is a fantastic question. So you may have seen in the last year or so, we launched a new hub called Measurement Diagnostics. And these have basically been repurposed and moved to a different part of the UI. You can see these now within the conversion summary page. There's a lot of exciting updates that came through with this launch. And I'm just going to quickly cover a quick overview of what those are. So first of all, you have this status. Jane actually walked through this in the video demo where you can actually see a quick overview of the status of your specific conversion actions. Are we actually receiving data? Is there some type of alert that needs to be addressed? So think of that kind of as a little bit of a 30,000-foot view of your conversion actions. And then we have alerts. These are the same alerts that always appeared in the Google Ads UI previously. Again, just repurposed to this new Measurement Diagnostics hub. And then we also have this coverage and impact portions of the Measurement Diagnostics. And excuse me, coverage basically shows you sort of your performance over time, but specifically looking at things like PII rate. So you can see historical data, it's aggregated across all the conversion actions you're looking at. And what this allows you to do is actually see, okay, if you add, things like additional match keys, you can see how that actually affects your PII validity over time, which ultimately can, improve performance for enhanced conversions. And then lastly, we have the impact card, which is equivalent to what internally we call sort of EC's a feeling value. Some of you might be familiar with that terminology, but this is really kind of the most important metric we think of when we talk about enhanced conversions, which really shows you that expected uplift or uplift for adding EC into your account, as well as the corresponding match rate if those are available. Just note that the feeling value or the specific uplift might not appear for some time. I think it takes about at least 30 days post-implementation for that data to appear. It also will disappear after a certain amount of time. So be sure that you're checking the UI after implementation to view those numbers.
All right, thank you so much. Then we have another question for Emma, which is there a technology or a workaround for impression/video view through conversion reporting?
Definitely. So for YouTube specifically, we offer engaged view conversions, and this is how we're actually able to capture that data for YouTube specifically to use in reporting and bidding. By enabling enhanced conversions, we're actually able to capture those EVCs. And if you're unfamiliar with what engaged view conversions are, it's essentially an engagement event after a user watches at least 10 seconds of a video ad. So they don't actually need to click the ad, but need to actually view it for at least 10 seconds. So I'd say this is really the kind of equivalent that we have to a true sort of view through conversion at the moment. Potentially more updates on that in the future, but at this time, enhanced conversions does not support view through conversions.
All right, thank you, Emma. The next question that we received was technical, but it's a great question. When I pass a user attribute of the user in plain text and let Google Tag Manager do the hashing, I've noticed that the output, so this person would be checking Chrome developer tools, which I recommend. It's good to see how data is being passed on. I see that the parameter is different than the expected output of the hash. Is this expected? And the answer to this is yes, and there's a technical underlying reason for this. So SHA-256 is a one-way encryption algorithm, really. And so when this is done mathematically, what comes out is a series of ones and zeros. So this is really a binary output. There's then two ways to translate these ones and zeros into something useful that can be used. And that's what we call encoding. And there's two different ways that we encode in our products. One is called base64, and the other one is called hex. And so if you look this up, or even if you look at online tools who can generate a SHA-256 hash for you, there's usually a little drop-down menu where they ask you to choose between hash and base64 encoding. Now, if you want to hash your own data, what we sometimes call pre-hashing, we ask that you apply hex, so that the encoding method that you use is hex. However, if you let GTM or your Google tag do the hashing, for now, we actually use base64. If you try to hash data yourself because you want to ensure that it leaves your website correctly hashed by Google, you should hash a test email address with base64, and that output should match. I sometimes receive the question, do we add any other salting to this data? And so we don't right now, but we have some exciting plans in this space, which we're actually going to talk about at a different question. So a bit of a long answer, but if you use base64, the output should match what you're expecting. All right, the next question was for Emma. Can you match email addresses that are not Gmail? If you have an email, a phone number, how much extra does the other attributes help to improve our overall match rates?
Yes, so Enhanced Conversions fully supports non-Gmail matching for both Google Ads and Search Ads 360. The email address used, though, actually has to be tied to a Google account. That's just one caveat to mention. But yes, we support non-Gmail matching. In terms of the actual incremental benefit of additional match keys, we don't have any specific data points around this necessarily. But like I mentioned before, we have these amazing tools in the UI now where you can see things like PII rate over time. And we have seen improved performance when we add additional match keys, because the way that Enhanced Conversions work is we really have these really high bars for things like PII quality, match quality that have to be met in order to even utilize that first party data for matching and attribution. And so if any situation exists where we have a single match key, we're not able to actually perform the match with Google signed in users, or the data is invalid for some reason, think of the additional match keys as almost like a fail-safe, having additional data points that we're able to utilize to hopefully find that match between a Google signed in user. So practically speaking, absolutely, we recommend adding those additional match keys support just as a best practice, but we don't actually have any specific numbers around that incremental benefit.
All right, thank you so much. We have a couple more questions for Emma before we move on to Jane and myself. So we have, I am actually missing the enhanced conversion option when I go to conversions and settings. Why is that the case?
The most plausible reason for this, so in order to actually see this available, you have to, the first thing you have to do to opt in to enhanced conversions is sign our terms of service. So that is all within the same portion of the UI. Once you actually opt in and accept our terms of service user policies, then you'll be able to opt into enhanced conversions specifically. But yeah, there shouldn't be another reason why you're not able to see that.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't out of time checking new questions. And then one final question for Emma for now. Is there any difference in the performance of enhanced conversions set up via Google Tag and Google Tag Manager?
Another great question. This ultimately just really comes down to how how your conversion tracking is set up today. We have full support for GTag and Google Tag Manager. What I have seen kind of worked well in the past is a lot of advertisers will use Google Tag Manager to deploy changes in mass and bulk. They have tons of tags aggregated into one setup. And so this is a very easy way to make quick changes on the fly versus more manually going into individual Google tags as an example. But ultimately, this just comes down to personal preference, how your web developer team might have things set up from sort of a optimization perspective. But yeah, there's no performance difference at all.
Perfect, thank you. Then a question for Jane. How can I check that my enhanced conversions for leads has been set up correctly? And how can I check how they're currently set up?
Yes, this is a great question. And as Emma and I both mentioned, diagnostics is a great way to ensure that your enhanced conversions is set up correctly. You'll be able to see alerts both at the conversion action level on that ECL action, as well as under the diagnostics tab. So you'll be able to check, is the tag firing, is PII or user provided data being captured? And then also for enhanced conversions for leads, we have offline import diagnostics. So as I mentioned, it's really important to ensure that you're sending that offline data for enhanced conversions for leads to ultimately work. So you can also troubleshoot here to ensure that CRM or API or Sheets data is coming through accurately. And again, all of this is listed in our help center and explains how the alerts work, how to address them, and what to do next. But it's also all in the UI.
Amazing. Thank you. The next question that we received, a very important one, in terms of GDPR compliance, to what extent do e-commerce websites take legal risk when they implement Google Enhanced Conversions? So firstly, anytime you handle user data, it's very important that you comply with the law. And so in a way, anytime you handle user data, you are taking a degree of legal risk. Now, of course, we wouldn't launch a product in a market if we didn't feel that it would be compliant with local laws. And we have sometimes in the past decided not to launch certain products in the EU for that reason. Now, where our priority lies is one, making sure that our end, we handle user data correctly. So we put a lot of measures in place that we think really improve the safety of enhanced conversions. But the other big thing that we try to do is be super clear on how we process user data, both on our help center, but then also we have a lot of extra documentation available that your Google team or the support team would be able to share with you. So generally what I would recommend is that you do, of course, go through legal reviews for enhanced conversions. If you look up data protection impact assessment, those are some really good questions that you should ask as you evaluate enhanced conversions. This is the same for any product where you handle user data, and then your Google team would be able to help you out with answers to any questions where you might not be sure. Now, what we don't specify, so we specify in very clear terms how we use user data and how we want you to handle that data, but what we don't specify is how exactly you should request consent. For enhanced conversions, we just say that you need to make sure that you follow local laws. And so that really would be a question for your own legal team to revise, because that depends a lot also on how you yourself handle data. All right, then the next question was actually audience related. So how can I bid more on my returning customers? How can I target the frequent users? I'll pass it on to Jane first, and then I might add some context as well.
Yeah, Jen, would love your context on audiences. The way I thought about this from an enhanced conversions for leads standpoint was importing and bidding to a converted lead. Ultimately, importing that data will tell you who that user is that's ultimately converting. So step one would be to actually map your lead to sale journey. If you have not done this yet, I highly recommend this exercise. It's really, really helpful to understand the different stages a customer takes until they ultimately convert. And then ensure you're passing back that converted lead data. Again, it's really important to ensure there's enough volume and it's recent enough so that the system can really learn from it. But that's my enhanced conversions for leads take on it. But there's definitely things you can do in audiences. I believe there's a certain goal in Performance Max. Customer lifecycle goals can also help with this. So there's a lot of options out there as well.
Yes, so what I would say, so if you're an online sales advertiser, and so if you're using enhanced conversions for web, it's important to keep in mind that enhanced conversions is a measurement product. So the primary goal is that we count correctly and that we improve the performance of your bidding. Now, there is a kind of natural shift that will happen as our bidding algorithms optimize. If we find that returning users provide the most value to your business, we would also take that into consideration with bidding. But I think what this user might be looking for is more a specific solution that would allow you to tell our system that, hey, I actually really care about returning customers. If you set up enhanced conversions for web, you can enable something called conversion-based customer lists, which is a mouthful. We really need to change the name to something more straightforward. But this basically allows you to create a customer match list of users who have converted on your website. So if you find it difficult to separately set up customer match or any audience data imports, you can do that directly from your enhanced conversions for web data. And that then allows you to have a list of customers who have bought from you before. You can then connect those into your other campaigns, and you can either manually apply bid adjustments, which, to be honest, this day and age is not so important anymore, because we anyway would look at the return on ad spend for your audience list to understand whether someone contributes or distracts from your overall goals. But there are, as Jane mentioned, specific campaign settings called customer lifecycle goals, where you can tell, for instance, your performance max campaigns that you either want to focus just on new customers or actually that you would rather focus much more on returning users. And so once you have those conversion-based customer lists, long name, you can then go into the system and enable those lifecycle goals. Definitely also chat to your Google team about this, because we have actually a range of betas in this space right now. And so we think that these ways of telling the system specifically what your goal is for a specific audience is very helpful. And so there's a lot that we're doing in this space to make that easier and more flexible. All right, let me double check that I'm on the right tab. Yes, so the next question that we received is one for Emma. Are enhanced conversions available for all types of conversions, including a click on a telephone or a click on a specific URL, or would it only be a subset?
Great question. So the way enhanced conversions works is ultimately PII has to be present on the page somewhere. So whether that's an email address or home address or phone number, we have to be able to retrieve that hash PII where that conversion event is happening. So the best guidance that we give to marketers is think about sort of the stages of the funnel and really look for those deep conversion actions. So this is typically an actual conversion event page, a sign up page, where are users actually submitting PII along the customer journey. That being said, there are different, depending on how your website is configured, there can be different parts of your website, different parts of the actual customer journey where you actually might collect that PII. So there aren't specific conversion actions per se that we would omit from EC's setup. And in fact, as a best practice, we now recommend that advertisers who enable EC actually do it at the account level, which opts in all conversion actions into EC in case there are the situations where we're able to retrieve that PII. So it just kind of depends on the workflow, how your website is configured, where you're actually capturing PII. But most commonly, it's purchase page, conversion page, signups, things like that.
All right, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to hop on over to some of the live questions. So this is going to get slightly more chaotic, but we'll see how it goes. So one of the questions that we received was, what is the expected share of model conversions once enhanced conversions has been set up? So it's important to consider that we use conversion modeling for specific areas where we know that there is a gap in measurement visibility. And so a good example of this would be cross-device conversions. We know that users move between devices as they purchase something, and we are generally pretty good at estimating how many conversions we might have missed from that type of behavior. Now, the way we do modeling is we look at what we sometimes call a ground truth. So we look at the cases where we do have full visibility into a purchase path, and we would use that data to then estimate for your account how many conversions you might have missed. Now, if you implement enhanced conversions, what ends up happening in these cases is where previously we had to model how many conversions we think would have happened. With enhanced conversions, we receive the actual data. And so in those cases, rather than relying on modeling, we start relying on the actual data. Now, something that's a bit tricky to wrap your head around is that we apply quite strict kind of thresholds to our modeling data. So we always tend to underestimate your true conversions versus that we overestimate and that we take credit for conversions that didn't really happen. And so sometimes when you implement enhanced conversions, your share of model conversions goes down, but your total conversions that you see in the account actually stays the same, because where previously we were unsure, we are now sure, but this isn't broken out in the UI. That's why when you implement enhanced conversions, you will at some point see an impact stat in your diagnostics where we tell you, thanks to enhanced conversions, we were able to report X% more conversions in your account. Now, we actually are thinking about how to represent this best in the UI, and we actually want to make it a bit more clear in the future what this uplift in observed data was from enhanced conversions, and we're working on that for this year, so definitely stay tuned. So bottom line, if you implement enhanced conversions, we actually would expect your share of modeled conversions to go down, but this is not something that we surface that way in the UI. Now, it's important to keep in mind that there will always remain cases where we just don't have visibility. So if you think about a cross-device user where you share information to us, but they don't have a Google account, again, we delete the data. And so that would still be a conversion that we model or we miss out on, depending. So that's how it works right now. Let me scroll through the list of questions. There was a great one on HubSpot. So what is the best way to track HubSpot offline conversions in ads? And then how do I actually get the G-clip mapped from HubSpot through the Google Ads? Jane, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I touched on it a little bit in the presentation, but Google Ads Data Manager launched a bit ago, and HubSpot is one of the connectors that is available today. So I would recommend setting up HubSpot via Data Manager. So if you watch back at the demo, or you're just going to set up a new conversion action, where I clicked on Google Sheets, you'll also see HubSpot there as an option, and you'll be able to make that direct connection via HubSpot in the UI. Similar to how I mapped the fields with the sheet, it included a Google Click ID, so you would be able to do the same thing via HubSpot. It makes it super easy. It's all in the UI and will save you ultimately a lot of time because the system will handle the hashing on your behalf. Again, also, we just did a full overhaul of the external help center with steps for each connector. So you'll be able to go into the external help center as well. I believe it's linked in the UI to follow step-by-steps how to set this up, but it is meant to be pretty intuitive with Data Manager. And then again, like how to get the G-Clip to HubSpot through to ads. This will be mapped via the fields once you make the connection.
All right, thank you. Next question that we got was some data protection officers are refusing the ability to use enhanced conversions because SHA-256 is not compatible with GDPR rules. Can you clarify whether this protocol follows GDPR rules for EMEA region? So thank you for the question, and that's a very important question. Firstly, as I mentioned at the start, we do, of course, review local laws and regulations. So if we would feel that this would not be an appropriate way to handle user data, we likely would change it. Now, GDPR says that you as an advertiser or as a business need to take appropriate measures to safeguard any data transfers. And I have heard concerns that SHA-256, because the output is always exactly the same, that there would be ways not to unhash it, but to, if you intercept it, there would maybe be ways to reverse engineer an email address. And I understand why some advertisers share these concerns. So something that we are thinking about at scale and are building out at the moment is something that we call confidential matching for enhanced conversions. And so if you search on Google confidential matching, Google blog, you'll find a really nice blog post that outlines this in detail. What we would do with confidential matching, which we have available right now for customer match, but is also coming to enhanced conversions, is that rather than the data going from your website directly to us, where we do the matching, instead the matching takes place on what we call a trusted execution environment. And that would be a private cloud instance where user data is handled. And then what leaves that private cloud instance is only the data that matches Google logged in users. And so where currently, if you transfer data to us, you need to trust that we follow the law. With confidential matching, you can actually verify for yourself that we treat data in the way that we say. So you can get technical guarantees of how we treat data from third parties. You can even inspect our code ourselves. And so that's our effort to be very transparent of how we process personal data. Now, another thing that happens when you use confidential matching is rather than the data just getting hashed and sent to us, the data actually gets encrypted. So there's an additional layer of how this data goes from your website to this private cloud instance. And so it doesn't rely on this kind of output mechanism that makes any email address always have the same output. So a very long answer, but if you as an advertiser or as an agency, if you work with advertisers who have this concern, I understand where they're coming from, and confidential matching would be a great solution to use. At the moment, for tag-based conversion tracking, we are in alpha. So if you let your Google team know, this will be available to you at some point, and maybe you can participate in the alpha. But down the line, we would love to make this the default way to share any enhanced conversions data via the Google tag, because I agree that the way data is transferred is really important. Emma, I don't know if you want to add anything to this. I spoke for a long time.
Oh yeah, I think you're spot on. I think the big takeaway here is that confidential compute as an investment area is extremely top of mind for our product team. You'll see this as a recurring theme. through marketing events and all the advertiser events that we do throughout the year. And it is, I would say, probably the most significant change that I have seen in the sort of ads measurement space in quite some time. It is really representative of sort of a more privacy safe future, and one that is leveraging the best in class of privacy enhancing technologies, or PETs. So I think Google has always had a very high standard for privacy across all of our solutions, but this to me is truly best in class. And so I'm very excited to see all of the solutions that leverage first party data will be operating on this trusted execution environment model. So lots more to come, but yeah, we're very excited about this space and how it's going to continue to develop.
Amazing, thank you. So I'm going to take one final question, and I saw a few variations of these, and that was, does enhanced conversions help to compensate the loss of data due to consent mode? And very similar question, does this work for people who don't opt into cookies? Now, it's important to distinguish that there's two specific things that cause gaps in measurement. There is gaps due to user consent, so users who choose to opt out of tracking, and then there's gaps due to technological changes, such as third-party cookies going away. We cannot measure cross-device, and in some cases, we have visibility or we lose visibility because browser data gets deleted. And these are two very different things. So if you use consent mode, in the EU, what happens is if you choose to share enhanced conversions data via Google Tag, we only share data with users who consent. So if you have consent mode configured correctly and someone rejects cookies, we, of course, also don't send their user-provided data or the email address to Google via the tag. If you choose to upload data to us with the API, it's your responsibility that you ensure that you only send us the data that you want to share with us. So whatever you send us, we will process, regardless of the choice that someone made with consent mode on your cookie consent banner. So this is a very important distinction, because in one case we handle it for you and we only use consented, and in the other case it's up to you to determine what you want to do here and then what you share with us. So no, in a way, enhanced conversions doesn't recover unconsented conversions. That to us really is the job that consent mode does. As you likely know, we have two flavors of consent mode. There's the basic one that just ensures that your tags only fire for consented users. And then there's advanced consent mode, where we use some anonymized signals for unconsented users to recover some of the conversions lost due to users not consenting. So again, these are two separate problems. Enhanced conversions solves for the technological restrictions, whereas consent mode helps you with consent choices. And of course, we want to both comply with the law, but also recover measurements where we can. So if recovering unconsented conversions is of high priority to you, I would say maybe ask your Google team for more information on advanced consent mode, and they can help you out with some extra information. So with that, I think we have exactly 1 minute left, so we will close it out here. So again, please do fill out our feedback form, and we hope to see you next time with hopefully more exciting updates. Thank you so much.
Thank you.